Good morning. Lovely to have you all with us today. My name's Leslie Morris. I'm the project manager for Ready to Rise here at the Challenges Group. I am joined by my colleague Emma Ives, who works with Firstport, who are our partners for this project. This is the second year in a row that we've run the Ready to Rise project. It's aimed at women who are considering social business as a means to make a living and find flexible work. And I'm super, super excited today to have a lovely panel with us this morning, all from quite different types of businesses. So we have Courtney Bennet, who was going to be joined by her wife Felicity, who is unfortunately unwell this morning. But Felicity and Courtney are the managing directors of Visiting Angels in Edinburgh East. They're on a mission to make a difference and impact the care industry with a revolutionary take on managing their care service. Felicity's background is in business and marketing, Courtney's is in nursing, so bringing together all this experience, they partnered on this venture to bring value to carers' lives and improve the quality of care delivered. We also have Starkeeper Morton, whose journey into social entrepreneurship began with volunteering in a maximum security prison. Being committed to wellbeing for social change, she has founded The Haven in Stonehaven and authored a self-advocacy guide, How to Survive When Society Lets You Down. And through her ideas and in her inclusive projects, she demonstrates how purpose-driven entrepreneurship can transform lives and inspire others to align their ventures with their values, and proves that small actions can actually lead to meaningful and lasting change. And last but not least, we are joined by Zakia Moulaloui. Apologies if I have not pronounced that correctly, Zakia. Zakia is the founder and CEO of Invisible Cities, which is an award-winning social enterprise that trains people who have experienced homelessness to become a tour guide. And after a career in international events where she worked with organisations such as UEFA and TED, she wanted to use the power of travel and tourism to support people in our communities. She's been awarded Traveller of the Year 2024 by Nat Geographic, and as one of 100 women in tourism, she loves talking about sustainability in travel. So we've got a real diversity of businesses here today. Would any of you like to volunteer to speak first? Or will I pick on one of you?
I don't mind going first if,
Thank you,
yeah,
Zakia. I'll hand over to you then.
no problem. It's really lovely to see you all, for some of you, or to be here and talk about a little bit about my journey, and hopefully that's helpful to some of you. I always love talking about it, so hopefully I'll keep it short. I'll keep the time that I've been given. But again, if anybody is after this is wanting to having more questions or chat, I'm always happy for that to happen too, and for my contact details to be shared. So my name is Zakia, and you pronounce my name. It's very, very only the vowels, no consonants at all. So very easy to say. But I came from France 17 years ago now, 16 and a half years ago, for something completely unrelated. I moved to Scotland because I was a teacher. I used to be an English teacher in France, and realized at the time, but still now, sadly, the kind of education system was, too few teachers, too many hours. It was very complicated. I was really young as well, and so even though I really loved the language and teaching my own teaching English and teaching languages to kids, I thought what I want to do actually is to teach abroad anyway. So I moved to Edinburgh in particular because I was lucky enough to find a spot in a really good school here in George Heriot School. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't. The original inspiration for Hogwarts, which we used to take that title very seriously. But quickly realized that teaching wasn't for me altogether. As lovely as the school was, I wasn't meant to be a teacher. But I was meant to stay in Scotland. So I guess my career started with a place and not with any idea of what to do. I knew that I wanted to be in Scotland and to be in Edinburgh specifically, but I didn't know what I could do beyond the studies that I had done. I studied linguistics and languages, and so I that's all I had as baggage. But I was fortunate enough to meet people along the way. So waiting tables and doing jobs, all the things you do that, supports you with your day to day. And then alongside that, through friends and people, I met somebody who back in 2010, 2011 said, we're looking for an event planner, somebody who has abilities with languages and who speaks French. So I was like, oh, that's me. And I will see what I can do. And I really took it as another opportunity in the long road of opportunities. I didn't think that this would be the start of a career or anything. I just thought, I've been waiting tables, I've been making cocktails, I've been doing all these things. So why not? I could well work in an office and see what happens. That will be a change for me. So I entered kind of the world of events that way with not much of a plan beyond it and just as another thing, but quickly realized that I really, really enjoyed it and I was really good at it. I think events, like travel and tourism, has the ability to, if you work hard, if you graft hard, and you try to do the best you can, you will go very far, I think. A lot of it is a lot of common sense, a lot of kind of, yeah, just being a team member. So I really loved that, and I could see the difference that I could make. So I started doing events, a lot of sports events. I worked with an organization called the Homeless World Cup, Street Soccer Scotland, which you may have heard as well about. So, but I would do events all year round with, strangely enough, a lot of sports related organizations and a lot of beauty related organizations. So I was not discriminating against anyone, but those events took me all around the world, and we would go to a place, so like Paris, organize a sports event, and once the event was done, move on to the next one and the next one and the next one. So it was maybe those, a nomad life before nomad life was a thing. And I really, really enjoyed that. And that's how I spent most of my 20s, kind of working on events, sometimes at a very grassroots level, and sometimes very high end, as I said, with people like UEFA or like with VIP attendees and things like that. But what I really enjoyed was the work and making something happen out of nothing. You start an event with a spreadsheet, most likely, if you're like me, and then one day the event happens, and all the little things that you have put together mean that this event is going on. Um, so I was doing that until I was 27, 28, and then sadly, when I turned 27, my health took a bad turn. I think you could say that I was probably overworked and not looking after myself too much. And I was diagnosed with cancer, which was a bit of a surprise, and completely, I don't have any history of that anywhere in my family and things like that. But so I had to stop working. And what it did for me is it made me realize how much I enjoyed traveling, how much I enjoyed being on the go all the time, how much I enjoyed not being at home too much, and made me focus on that aspect of my life specifically, rather than my day-to-day routine, if that makes sense. So once I got all better and I'm all good now, I've all healthy and everything, and I have been for a while, I decided that I wanted to focus on that with my work, and no longer for it to be a side effect of the job that I was doing, if you want. So this is when the idea for Invisible Cities kind of came about. And I thought, what I really enjoy while traveling is meeting people. And of course, I do that in a professional capacity. So I would have had maybe opportunities to meet people that you don't meet when you travel as a tourist, as a traveler. I would listen to stories that I maybe wouldn't have had access to as a traveler. And I thought, how can I combine that storytelling piece with the travel? And how can I support tourist visitors to Scotland to listen to these stories from people? So that's very much the basis for Invisible Cities, and training people to become guides who have a different story than, maybe you would expect from a tour guide in the place that you visit. And so I took really much a year out to really think about the idea and really work on it. Now, when I say I took a year out, that's personally speaking, I'm not somebody who saves a lot of money, and I didn't have access to a lot of money at the time. So my type of personality is that if I have £10, I will spend 11. I will live hard and high, and so I didn't have anything to fall back onto. So while I was working on Invisible Cities, I had to go back to my tables and my kind of casual jobs to be able to support myself. So at the very start of Invisible Cities, I worked full time, but I also worked full time on the idea. And that lasted a year and a half, as I said. While I was doing a lot of research, a lot of networking, a lot of talking to people, a lot of establishing what Invisible Cities could be. And it's very much in 2016, I launched officially Invisible Cities and approached a lot of different people experiencing homelessness in the city through a lot of random people on LinkedIn, through networking events that I approached and said, I have this idea, what do you think about it? And they connected me with the people that they thought would be useful. So I benefited a lot from people saying, yeah, let's just go for a coffee and chat about it and see what I think. And I would ask all the questions and say, if you think it is rubbish, just let me know. Oh, I think I lost you maybe. Oh, are you back?
No,
You can
you're
hear me?
okay. You're all good.
I froze for a second, so nobody wants to see that on their screen. Um, but it was very much in 20, so that was a year and a half, 2 years of preparation work, if you want. And then in 2018 is when Invisible Cities was fully established. We were starting to make a little bit of money from tours. We are a tour operator, so if anyone has experience of going up and down the Royal Mile, we are like everybody else there. We sell as many tours as possible, and that's how we make our income, to pay not only our guides, but also now people behind in the background like myself. So it's only in 2018 that I was able to work full time for Invisible Cities, and employ others as well. So we train people and focus very much on that training piece so people can grow confidence, develop skills, and if they want out of that, become guides. If they don't want to and instead want full-time work or part-time work, or they want more office hours because they have caring duties or whatever that may be, then guiding may not be for them. So we also support people into employment wherever that is. I always say guiding can be one of the consequences, but it's not the ultimate goal. And then we deliver our tours to tourists, locals, visitors. And over the years have expanded what we do, not only in Edinburgh, but also through the UK. So now run tours in Glasgow, Manchester, Cardiff, York, and the Scottish borders, with plans to expand to Aberdeen this year, but also loads of other places. So I've grown the team from just me running around crazy to 5 of us in the background, so working on comms and working on scheduling and admin and all of this, to a team of 18 guides across different locations. And to date, we're nearly trained 150 people. So it's a long project because training takes time and it's in depth. And so it's not about the quantity of people, but the quality of what we do with them. And over the years, we have worked with brands like Nat Geo or like Lonely Planet or people in the travel sphere. So what I'm interested in is, of course, supporting people and doing that storytelling piece that was at the core of my why am I doing this, what I want to achieve through Invisible Cities, but also in the travel and tourism space, because I think that it's a really exciting world. It's a very economically speaking big world where you can do a lot of different things. Scotland and Edinburgh in particular, massive tourism destination, loads of potential. And I really want to change the narrative that whenever we travel, we have to see a sleek version of a city. It has to be a postcard. It has to be beautiful with the castle and snow and things like that. Of course, it can be, but a place is also what the people in that place are and who they are and what they do. So I really want to highlight more authentic travel and tourism experiences. So now my role has changed again, and that's how I will finish. And I think my journey and my career has highlighted is that it's never a single thing. It's always an evolving, changing world. And one of the best quotes that I heard was, you know how we say it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to raise a business, which is very true. It's very collaborative, and it's definitely not only me, but the way I take it is that things, you raise something, so it changes all the time. And I think now that, I'm at a different end of that journey where I'm lucky enough to do other bits of work with talking at conferences, traveling again a lot, of course, working on the business day to day, but it's not my sole thing anymore because I have an amazing team that I know can do the day to day job. So I do conferencing and I do, sometimes consultancy with people who want to set up similar projects in other countries in the world, which is quite interesting because I feel like I can pass on whatever knowledge I've learned along the way. So it's an never ending kind of journey and learning process that changes day to day. So from year to year, it's never quite the same. So we're growing and we're changing and things are not quite the same. And similarly, my work and my role changes alongside that, I guess. Should I stop now? Have I gone way over time?
You're
Has
fine.
it been helpful?
It's been great. What an incredible story and what an incredible business. Not only helping the economy, but actually helping people to find meaningful work as well. I think that's just wonderful. And I think as well, what we hear a lot on these types of events, Zaki, is what you're saying about that community around you. It's not just a lonely journey. It's actually you need that community around you as well. So really, really appreciate you sharing your story. I will hand over now to Starkeeper, and we'll keep questions to the end if that's all right. Thanks a million, Zakia.
It was so fascinating to hear you speak, Zakia. I too began my career in travel, so I found that a really interesting kind of synergy. Just checking that everyone can hear okay
Yep,
and that
here we can
everyone
hear
can
you and
see.
see your screen.
Wonderful. Such an honor to be here, truly. And I really spent some time thinking what I could give you that will hopefully be of value. But just a little background about myself, and then also the things that I wish I had been told and I found along the way to be really helpful. So as Leslie shared earlier, I started my social entrepreneur journey volunteering in a maximum security prison. Um, and I think that's important that you know that about me because it's really informed my journey so far. I've created quite a few social enterprises over the past decade, and I want to be really clear, I don't really have any answers, and I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and also that I'll never know what I'm doing, but I'm at peace with that now. And also the way I go about doing things, I think that's really important to highlight because if you're making changes, not everyone's going to be in it with you. And that makes that aspect of community that we referred to earlier even more important. And also, I genuinely believe that social businesses, social enterprises can change the world. And I'm incredibly, incredibly passionate about it. So when I was volunteering at the maximum security prison, one of my yoga students took their own life, and this had a profound impact on me. And what I realized is I got to them too late. And what if I was able to have met Camille when she was a 4 year old and what things I could have potentially supported her with, just being able to breathe and make decisions in a different way. And that's what led me to retrain as a kids yoga teacher. And so that was my first venture, which is Star Sparks, which I still run today. And I never wanted money to be the barrier for people to access well-being support. And so all my classes were donation based. And the classes grew. And then all of a sudden, there was a demand for pregnancy yoga and teen yoga and adult yoga. And then I had this really crazy idea because my community was running out of space for me to put on classes is what about if I get my own space? And that's how the Haven in Stonehaven came about. And so we're all about well-being for social change. And when I started the Haven, I was really liking what Zakia was saying about how she did like 2 years of research and I did nothing. I just like dove right in, had no clue, and kind of worked it out. So it was a steep learning curve. Um, and to be fair, I think if I had tried to preconceive what it was going to be, I would have limited it because the reality is so much bigger than the dream. So when I started teaching yoga from the space, I realized this is too much space for me. Surely there's other people in my community who are wanting to support other people through well-being and have talent and skills to share. And so within 3 months, I had 30 people working from the space. And then I realized actually there's other people who can put on classes, but there's not everyone can necessarily uh, go along for the ride and work out what this is and what this means. And so our visions for flourishing communities where everyone feels supported, included, and belongs. And I think that's really important, more so even post-pandemic, where social isolation is a really massive issue, with 45% of people saying that they feel lonely. And also, although there's an emotional aspect of that, it actually physically affects our health, increases, your chance of heart disease and also stroke. It's like been equivalent to like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, being socially isolated and lonely. And along the way, listening to our community and all the words and all the feedback that they gave us about from their experience at the Haven in Stonehaven, we came up with our values. And we're a really values-driven organization. So every decision I make as the leader of the organization and as a board, we base on our values. We also hire people based on their values because hard skills can be taught, but soft skills like values, they're part of a person's fabric and makeup, and therefore you wouldn't want to change a person's, who they are. So you need to adhere to our values to be part of the Haven. And then we define what those values are as well. And just a little bit around Stonehaven, if you're not familiar with it, in Scotland. So we're about 20 minutes south of Aberdeen. We're predominantly perceived as a middle class area. So therefore, we have no trauma and we have no problems. It's just hidden deeper in the community. So we've got a well-being space. So I'm in the healing room right now, which is also our office. We have a mindful room and we also have a studio space. We also have a teaching garden on the beachfront, and we run our community fridges project, which I'll come into in a little bit more detail later. So during the pandemic, so just had that big push of creating a social enterprise and all the sacrifice and blood, sweat, and tears and what that means to be hit with the pandemic. And everything shut down. And I was like, what do we need to do to support our community's well-being through the pandemic? And I realized a lot of the people who were working from the space at the Haven were mostly single moms who were starting their own ventures. And they lost their wage. And how were they going to, afford feeding their families during lockdown? And I discovered that we threw away 2 tons of food every month in our community. And yet there was people going hungry in our community. And that's how the community larder started. So our yoga studio transformed into a community food larder. No experience of food poverty, no experience of food insecurity. And as you can see, I've just got some stats on what we achieved there. Couldn't get funding to keep it going, so that's when we diversified into and made it more operationally efficient through the community fridges. So now we have fridges that are scattered around in our community and schools and charity shops, and we still collect the food. Anyone still can go and help themselves to the food, but it's just through the community fridge model. And right now we're in our community wellbeing project, which is a 3-year project funded by the National Lottery. And we've supported 1,700 people's wellbeing through free and donation-based activities. The community decides what they need, what they would like, and then we just make that happen. And there's lots more detail on the website if you're really interested in that. So I'm going to move on to something else, but there's information there if that's something that's of interest to you. So this is what I really want to talk about. That's just a bit of background, but these are the things that I wish I had known, that I've discovered, that I really hope are helpful to you in some way. So absolutely embody what your social enterprise is. So for me, it's well-being. So the last thing anybody wants is a stressed out, burnt out person running a social enterprise for well-being. So you really have to model it. And I was at the Aberdeen Health and Wellbeing Festival on the weekend. And it was a great event, really loved it. But I was super surprised all the stall holders were handing out sugar and chocolate and handing it all to the kids that were visiting the festival. And I was like, well, we're about health and well-being, and yet we're just plowing everyone through with sugar. So kind of thinking, we always say dignity's in the details at the Haven. So really thinking about what it is that you want your social enterprise to be, and making sure you're just living that and not just talking about it. The other thing is that people might have a shared vision with you, but they might not necessarily have the same values and work ethic. So when I was starting the Haven, there were some people who really wanted to be involved, and ultimately they didn't want to take the risk, and they also didn't want to put the same amount of work into it that I did. And I think that's really important that you consider that if you're especially going in a collaborative approach. In some ways, to start something, it's easier if just one person takes the hit. It just moves things a lot quicker in your decision making. Also, finding a peer mentor. If you want to remember one thing I've said today, please find a peer mentor. We do not talk enough about this. So I had this idea for the Haven, no idea. I didn't even know what social enterprise was. I knew I didn't want a business because I'm not just motivated by money. And I also know I didn't want a charity because it just felt too complicated for me. And then I had a roommate at a retreat in Ali Apple, I call her. And she said, what do you do? And I told her about my idea. And she said, well, you should look into social enterprise. And this was over 8 years ago now. And we still speak every single day, especially during the pandemic. Actually, we speak probably more than once a day through messages and voicemails. And then she got £500,000 funding to build a woodland centre and her social enterprise. And it was really nice then to be able to help her in terms of venue hire, because that's what the Haven does as part of its income generation. So find someone who can walk along this journey with you. And then finding a mentor. I'm really fortunate that I have Thane Laurie as my mentor, and he was the CEO of Scarf, which is a massive energy organization, also social enterprise. And he's also been a Buddhist, a practicing Buddhist for 30 years. And so for me, because I'm a very spiritual person, although we're not a spiritual organization, the way that I lead and the way that I want to show up in my job, I don't think necessarily a lot of other leaders would understand in the way that I base decisions with my own personal values. And so he has just been instrumental, and he's now chair of our board as well. So finding a mentor, somebody who can really, really help you, who's walked the path before you, is really one of my secret sauce suggestions. The other thing is to show up. So the fact that you've showed up here today is you're already 99% ahead of most people. and that you're on time and that you're committed and that you're grateful for the opportunity because it's such a privilege to be even having the time and space to consider these things. I mean, I have to travel a lot to the Central Belt for a lot of our in-person training because the social enterprise landscape in Aberdeen, that's a whole nother story. Um, and, I have to pay for the travel and the hotel myself. And then there would be people who lived in Glasgow that would show up, 2 hours late. And I was just like, you don't realize how lucky you are. And the best thing is there's so much free training and there's so many opportunities in the social enterprise world. Take them, really take them. They'll serve you well. Do not overpromise and under-deliver, especially when it comes from any grant or funding application. You have people that promise you the world and it's all smoke and mirrors and it just doesn't serve you in the end. So just making sure that you can deliver on the things that you say you can deliver on. And absolutely defending your boundaries heroically. So for me, I got to a point where I was like, I'm not doing any more free work because you can get paid in other ways other than money. So it could be like expertise, reading the room, networking, trialing a new something new. But in this space, you get to a point where it's like, I'm only going to show up if it's mutually beneficial, and these are the things that I will show up for. So be mindful, your time and energy is an expense too. And definitely be brave enough to do things differently. So, for example, like Emma's here from First Port when I was getting my build it pitch for First Port, and I started my pitch with in ancient times. And Ray, my ray of sunshine, my relationship manager at the time, still talks about that. I think it made him borderline uncomfortable, but that's a good thing because that's what's going to make you memorable. And ask for forgiveness, not permission. So being really, really mindful that you don't need permission to exist and do what you're doing. I can give you lots of examples of stuff that I've got done just because I went ahead and did it. But then I would caveat that with, as long as it's legal and you're insured, take the risk and do it. And then learn from the mistakes later if you need to. I just think empowering yourself and other people to make decisions quickly. Because one of the things is when you're small and you're startup and you're social enterprise, you're agile, so you can move a lot quicker. And that's your superpower. So take advantage of that. So that's all my wisdom I have to share. Hopefully there's something there that's useful. I'd really love to hear about your journey. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, and also I've done a few more podcast episodes. People have asked me if you want to find me on Spotify, just put in Starkeeper Morton, and that goes into more detail about all the things that I've spoken about. And I just want to leave you with a quote for inspiration, which is the queen that is Beyonce, that power is given to you, is not given to you, you have to take it. And so I wish you really well with your unfolding of your venture.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful story. And I just your passion for it all just comes, it's tangible, you can feel it. Starkeeper, really lovely to hear about the work you're doing. And it's so, so important. I think you're right about that isolation and loneliness. It's a growing problem. And some fantastic advice there as well. Some really great tangible advice. So much, much appreciated. Okay, well, last but by no means least, I'm going to hand over to our final speaker today, Courtney, and I'll hand over to you now.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
Excellent. So I'll kind of give you the story of like how on earth did I end up doing this, or how on earth did we end up doing this? Obviously, I started visiting angels with my wife, Felicity, but she couldn't be with us just now. So if we go right back to the beginning, leaving school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really liked science. I really liked biology. So I was like, oh, okay, right, I'll go study like microbiology. So I did that. I enjoyed the subject matter, I enjoyed the topic. I really like to learn. But I was like, well, I don't want to like live my life in a lab. So I don't want to do that in the end. But I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like 21 and I moved back home and I worked in my dad's local. So I worked in the pub for ages. I loved that job. If I wasn't doing this now and working in a pub paid more, I would still be doing that because I loved it. Just being there, talking to people, you're essentially like a psychiatrist, counselor when you're the barmaid. And I got to watch all the sports that I love, which is excellent while I'm working. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I did some of the other things. I worked in a hotel, I worked in finance, and I wasn't inspired. I was never excited to go to work. Most of the time, I dreaded it. And sometimes you're like, oh, should I just like make up some excuse not to go to work? Then I met Felicity, or I re-met Felicity. We met when in primary school, actually. Um, and she decided she was going to go back to university. And she was moving to Edinburgh, and I was like, well, I could come with you, but what am I going to do there? So then that's when my mum was saying, but do you know, I've always thought, Courtney, you would make an excellent nurse. And I'm like, but I've never wanted to be a nurse. And then she pulled out this thing, a piece of homework that I'd done when I was in primary two. So I was 6 years old. And there was this ridiculous picture of a nurse with like a tall green hat with a red cross on it and like a green tunic and a syringe that was the same size as the nurse. And it said in ridiculous handwriting, when I grow up, I want to be a nurse so that I can help people. And my mum said, right, so you said you never wanted to be a nurse, so what do you call that then? So I was like, right, okay, but I was 6. I'm now like 24 at this point. I don't really know if that's what I want to do. And she said, well, do you know what? Apply. If you get in, try it. If you don't like it, quit. I was like, okay, it gives me a reasonable excuse to move to Edinburgh. So I did. And I started my nursing career and I absolutely loved it. It was just like being in the bar because you're the counselor and you're the psychiatrist and you meet all of these people. Excellent. The best thing I ever did. Best decision I ever made. But the whole process of being a nurse, working in A&E or working in a ward or even as a district nurse in the community, because you get to try a little bit of everything as a student. Um, like I liked bits of all of it, but for all of those journeys, I never got the same joy. You never really get to make meaningful relationships. You help people for the 12 hours that you're there, and when you go back for your next shift, they're gone. And you can't check up and find out how they are or where they've gone or what happened next for them. And they've moved on, and that's the end of it. That wasn't really working for me. So when I qualified, I went into residential nursing. So I worked into nursing homes. Most people in their kind of nursing journey, they do that once they're getting to the end of their career because they're too tired to be doing, working in the wards and all of that. It's kind of seemed like the next easiest thing. Thank you. So I was always the youngest one there. And when I started my first nursing job in a nursing home, there's only ever one nurse in your unit. And I was like, oh my God, I'm terrified. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never done this before on my own. But I worked with 3 women, 3 care support workers. They were all in their 50s. They'd all been doing this for a long time. They knew all of the residents there. And the 3 of them came to me separately and said, don't worry, Hen. We'll keep you right. We'll show you the way. We'll keep you on the right track. And I was like, but I'm meant to be the one that knows what I'm doing here. I'm meant to be in charge. I was like, well, okay, maybe my perception of the kind of hierarchy isn't quite right here because these people do know what they're doing. These are the people, as a student nurse as well, it's always the care support workers Nobody teaches a nurse how to give somebody a bed bath or how to get them dressed. It's care support workers that teach you those skills. They teach you a lot of the soft skills as well. It's so hard for people to accept that they need care. It takes that soft, gentle, people person approach, which is something I've always loved, including being in the bar. It's just the exact same. So these women, they were so important to me. I loved that job to a certain point. Once I got confident and I knew exactly what I was doing, and there was some things that weren't quite working, and some of the staff were getting into trouble for, oh, well, you didn't do this right, and you didn't do this right, and you didn't do this right. And I could understand why they'd done things a certain way. So I would work with the team that I was working with. At this point, I'd moved on from the women that eased me into the job. I was working with a younger team, most of them the same age or younger than me at the point. So I was, I don't know, mid to late 20s at this point. And so I was saying, right, let's come up with solutions. Like, let's think of all the things that we could do that would make this easier for you and better for the people that we're looking after. We came up with great ideas. I spoke to my team, I spoke to the night staff team, and then I took it to the manager. Right, we've got these great ideas. Right, you know how everybody's always complaining about this, and everybody's getting rushed out of bed, and some people don't want to have their breakfast at this time. What if we did this with the staffing? What if we did that? What if people start at this time and did it? And the manager literally said to me, I don't have time for this, Courtney. That's not going to work. I was like, but why wouldn't it work? So I don't have time for this conversation. We're not doing it. And I handed my notice in and I moved to another nursing home. I thought, if you're not even going to take the time to listen to me or explain to me why all of these things are not going to work, we're not going to get anywhere. That was not the best feeling when I thought I had all these great ideas. So I moved on to another nursing home. It was much bigger, a lot more responsibility. I was a more experienced nurse at this point. I loved that job. Then the pandemic happened. The pandemic was traumatic for basically everybody. Everybody all over the world has some kind of trauma from that. But I think unless you were working in health and social care, you can't, or unless you were like directly related to it, somebody, a loved one of yours or something went through it, you cannot possibly understand the trauma of that situation was unbearable for a lot of people. When I started my student nursing, there was four of us, four friends. Now, after the pandemic, one of them works in the NHS as a nurse in a ward. I am the only one that's even relatively close to doing nursing. That's a big, big problem. And I thought, right, how are we going to stop all of these people? How are we going to fix all of these problems? And I came home and Felicity saw me when I was coming home, stressed out, traumatized. You never got any gratitude from anybody else. It's a big part of the reason why I love the residential nursing, because families saw the impact you would make and they would thank you for it. I loved that. In terms of the people that you worked for, you never got any thanks. So I said to Felicity, this is so hard. I don't know how much longer I can do this. And then we kind of talked about all the different things, all the things that were wrong with health and social care, what different things need to be done, what would be better, what would make my life better, and what would make my colleagues' lives better. I'd already had the experience of trying to suggest things and getting the door slammed in my face. So eventually I said to Felicity, well, do you know what? I've been doing some research and I've found this care franchise. And she said, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, what do you mean? I haven't even told you anything about it. And she said, but you've got that twinkle in your eye again that you used to have that's gone. I want you to do this. I think it's the right thing. So I told her all about it. So Visiting Angels, it is a franchise. We are not the only ones. I feel like sometimes when you're trying to make a big change, you need to be a cog in a bigger wheel. So we found Visiting Angels. It's actually a global company, but in the UK, the point of Visiting Angels is to look at care differently. So we do care in the community. We look after the elderly. Um, Most people who have any experience of care, they're used to, oh, I'm just a carer. Just a carer is not a thing. Caregivers are superheroes. Clapping for carers was lovely. There was a nice sentiment behind it, but it didn't help anybody. Um, Actually making a difference to the people that do all of the groundwork, all of the hard work, that's what's important to me. That's what's important about Visiting Angels. So Dan, the franchisor, he came up with this brainchild of saying that we are going to be carer centric. In theory, if you think about it logically, if I'm going in to look after your mum or your gran, and I love my job, I people only do care because they love it, because it's built in you. You're either built as a carer or you're not. Um, but I'm coming in to look after your grandparent, and I'm rushing. I'm running late. I've just come from 10 miles down the road, and I was supposed to be here 10 minutes ago. So I'm supposed to be at the next place in 5 minutes, and I haven't even started yet. I am stressed out. What kind of quality of care can I possibly give to your loved one? I can't. It's going to be stressful for me and it's going to be stressful for you. And you're not going to get what you need out of this visit. So, in theory, if we sort of make visits longer, make sure that people are not getting 15-minute visits. I won't do it. We won't do it. No Visiting Angels in the country will do you a 15-minute visit because nothing can be done in that time. I can't get myself washed and dressed and out of the house in 15 minutes. So how can I expect to do that with somebody who's elderly and frail and has pain and is a falls risk and also needs their medication and their breakfast and getting dressed? It's not even doable. We spend a lot longer, which is nice because then people have the chance to have the conversations and build a relationship. Um, all of these things are so important in making the people that work for us, the people that work with us, they're not stressed in their job. They're going to people that they know and they're building the relationships and they're enjoying the job, which makes it enjoyable and not intimidating for the people that are receiving care and that need care. So this is kind of my why. Why did we do this? To make a difference. We are one cog. We are one little company in the corner of Edinburgh, Midlothian and East Lothian. How much impact can we really make? I already know of loads and loads of carers that I've interviewed. My interview process, I do a lot of talking because I want to make sure that people understand how important this is to us. If it's not as important to you, it's kind of like what Starkeeper was saying. If it's you don't have the same vision and you don't have the same values, then you can't deliver what we are expecting and what we're trying to give people. I'll always ask people when they come in for an interview, I'll explain this is my background and this is why we're here. This is what we want to change. Why are you here? There's 35 other care companies in and around the area. Why have you come to interview with us? And if ever anybody ever says to me, I need a job, I'll say, okay, bye. Go and get a job somewhere else then. That's kind of not good enough. Again, like both Zakia and Starkeeper both said, in the beginning, it was sort of just me and Felicity. And then we had a little team of carers. And then we had a bigger team of carers. We've had lots of different people come in and out because we think they're the right person. And it turns out they're not the right person. We now have an excellent, excellent support system, which I would say is the most important thing that you need. If you plan on making a change, you need the right people around you. And that goes at every single phase of it. Even if you plan to be a sole trader, because Felicity's been a businesswoman all of her life, she's been a sole trader. She never needed to hire anybody, but she needed support systems in place, whether that's somebody that can help you with childcare or somebody that can pick up the slack if you're not having a good day. You need always, I would say it's the most important thing, no matter what it is, be really passionate about it. because you have really hard days and you need to be able to remind yourself, this is why I'm putting myself through this, because it's not that easy. You need to be super passionate about whatever you decide to do, and you need to have the support system in place. I suppose that would kind of be my main advice. And like the other lady said, like I'm really grateful to have these opportunities to speak, because sometimes it's a really nice reminder for me, this is why I've done this. Um, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy for all of my details to be shared as well.
Thank you, Courtney. What a journey you've been
I
on.
know.
What a journey. And something you said actually really kind of got to me. When you raised the idea and Felicity immediately said, I can see something, you feel different about this, you look different. I
Yeah.
think that just resonates so strongly, because I think it's so important to pay attention to how you feel, and your work is such a huge part of your life. So that really did kind of made it was quite an emotional kind of reminder there.
Yeah,
And again, I think what you've said echoes what the others have said about you're not an island. You have to have that support network around you as well.
definitely. And that network needs to grow. If you plan on your business growing, your network needs to grow and your support system needs to become bigger as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so, so much. I am just going to bring my other panelists back onto the big screen. And once again, thank you all for sharing your journey and your advice so, so generously.